It was a rainy afternoon, and Alina, dressed in a sleek white dress and high heels, stood beside her luxury car parked awkwardly on the roadside. The tire had burst unexpectedly, and her phone had just died. Her frustration mounted as passing cars ignored her, and the rain began to pour harder. She muttered under her breath, sheltering herself under the open car door, completely unaware that someone had been watching her from a distance. A few meters away, beneath a makeshift shelter of cardboard and tarpaulin, sat Damon, a scruffy, rugged man in his late 20s, clearly homeless but oddly dignified. He had been observing her for a while, hesitant to approach, knowing how people like her usually responded to people like him. But her distress won over his doubt. Slowly, he rose and approached her, his step steady but cautious, and asked, "Need help with that tire?" Alina looked up, surprised. She instinctively took a step back, unsure if she should trust him. But something about Damon's tone felt genuine, calm, and unlike the usual aggressive strangers she'd run into before. After a few seconds of silence, she nodded reluctantly. "If you know how to fix it, be my guest." Damon gave a faint smile and got to work. Alina watched him from the passenger seat, slightly damp and shivering. Damon worked quickly, expertly unscrewing bolts and replacing the tire with the spare from her trunk. She couldn't help but be impressed. He moved like someone who had done this 1,000 times. "You've done this before," she commented, breaking the silence. He didn't look up, just nodded. "Used to work in a garage. Long time ago." That small sentence piqued her curiosity, but she didn't ask more. After about 10 minutes, Damon stood and wiped his hands on his worn jeans. "All done. Should be good to go." Alina looked at the fixed tire and then back at him. As she pulled out her purse to give him some cash, Damon held up his hand. "No need. Just happy to help." That surprised her even more. No begging? No chasing after her car as she drove off? She stood there for a moment, unsure what to say, before murmuring, "Thank you," and driving off. But something about him stayed in her mind. The next morning, Alina sat in her sleek office chair, sipping a cappuccino while absent-mindedly scrolling through emails. But her mind wasn't in the office. She kept replaying Damon's face and those kind eyes. She had met hundreds of men at parties, meetings, and events, none of them looked at her the way he did, with no judgment or hidden intentions. She glanced out her office window and found herself wondering what his story was. A man with those skills and that calm demeanor shouldn't be living on the street. Her curiosity quickly turned to action. By the time lunch arrived, she grabbed her coat and headed back toward that area. Back at the spot where they met, Damon was nowhere to be found. Alina waited in her car for nearly 30 minutes, hoping he'd appear. Disappointed, she finally drove off, not knowing that Damon had seen her from behind an alley and was watching her drive away with confusion and curiosity of his own. A few days passed. Alina didn't stop thinking about Damon. That weekend, she returned to the same neighborhood, this time with a bag of food and a power bank in her purse. She parked and walked around, scanning for any familiar faces. Eventually, she spotted him, sitting on a wooden crate behind an old diner, sketching something on a piece of scrap cardboard. She approached quietly. "Didn't expect to see you again," Damon said without looking up. Alina chuckled. "I wasn't sure I'd find you." She handed him the bag of food. Damon hesitated but took it. "Thanks," he said, opening it and seeing her favorite meal from a popular restaurant. "You didn't have to." They sat on the curb eating silently for a while. Then Alina asked, "What happened to you?" Damon looked at her for a long moment before answering. Life. One wrong decision after another. Then the world forgets you. His voice wasn't bitter, it was just tired. And for the first time in a long while, Alina wanted to remember someone the world had forgotten. Alina offered him a ride. Damon refused at first, but she insisted. They drove through the city at night, windows down, the wind tangling her hair and his beard. They didn't talk much, but the silence was comfortable. Damon directed her to a quiet hill overlooking the city lights. I come here sometimes, he said. Makes me feel less invisible. She looked at him, really looked. The beard, the torn clothes, the dirt, none of it could hide the handsome man beneath. You shouldn't be living like this, she whispered. Damon didn't reply. He just stared at the lights below. Alina reached into her purse and handed him the power bank. So your phone never dies, she smiled. Damon took it slowly, a little stunned. You're different, he said. Most rich people pretend we don't exist. Alina leaned back in her seat, staring at the stars. Maybe I'm tired of pretending too. A week later, Damon walked into a small cafe, cleaned up a bit, wearing a simple shirt and jeans Alina had brought him. She sat by the window, waving him over. You look better, she said. He shrugged, sitting down. Still smell like the streets, though. She laughed. They talked for hours, about her love for vintage cars, his past working in garages, her distant family, his broken one. For the first time in years, Alina let someone in. Damon wasn't polished, but he listened like no one else did. When he spoke, he didn't try to impress her, he was just real. As they finished their drinks, Alina asked something bold, why don't you come work with me? Damon blinked. Doing what? Fixing cars. I'll pay. You're good at it. You just need a chance. He stared at her, unsure whether to believe she meant it. But something in her eyes told him it wasn't pity. It was trust. Alina had a side garage she barely used, tucked behind her estate. Within a week, Damon was living in the small guest house and transforming the dusty garage into something new. He cleaned, sorted tools, repaired the workbench. The place came alive in his hands. Word spread quickly in the neighborhood. People brought in old vehicles, hoping for cheap repairs. Damon surprised everyone, his work was fast, clean, and honest. He didn't overcharge, didn't talk down to clients. He just did his job. And he loved it. Alina often watched from the window, sipping lemonade and smiling. Something was blooming, not just in her garage, but in her heart. Damon, with all his scars and silence, was slowly becoming the best part of her day. Not everyone was happy. Alina's friend Vanessa noticed the growing bond between her and Damon. One afternoon at brunch, she leaned in and whispered, "You're getting too close to that mechanic. People are talking." Alina rolled her eyes. Let them talk. But it got worse. Her ex-boyfriend, Victor, showed up at her office unannounced. "You're dating a homeless man now?" he scoffed. "Are you trying to ruin your reputation?" Alina stood, calm but firm. "I'd rather be with someone real than a shallow man with a bank account." Victor left, fuming. Alina didn't care. For the first time in years, she was choosing happiness over appearances. And Damon, quiet and observant, noticed the storm swirling around her, but she never told him. Damon worked late into the night, shirt off, sweat glistening on his skin as he leaned over a classic convertible. Alina came to the garage with lemonade, but paused when she saw him. She turned to leave, but he spotted her. "Hey, come in." She sat on a stool, watching him. "You ever thought of opening your own place?" she asked. Damon sighed. "Dreamed of it once. But dreams cost money." Alina bit her lip. "What if I helped?" He looked at her, something flickering in his eyes. "I don't want your money, Alina." She nodded. "I know. I believe in you." There was a long silence, heavy with unsaid things. Then Damon whispered, "You shouldn't." But neither of them looked away. The garage was quiet except for the ticking of cooling metal. Damon sat on the floor, back against the wall, and Alina joined him. Their shoulders touched, and it sent a strange jolt through both of them. She glanced at him, heart racing, unsure if it was the night air or something else that made her feel this way. "I never expected this," she said softly. "Meeting you. Feeling safe with you." Damon looked at her, surprised. "Safe? Around me?" She nodded. "More than I ever did with people who wore suits and smiled through lies." He chuckled. "That's a first." They leaned in, the space between them disappearing. Damon hesitated, his breath catching. Alina's lips were inches away. But just as their lips almost touched, her phone buzzed violently. She pulled back, the spell broken. I have to take this." Damon nodded, watching her walk away, his heart sinking. Alina couldn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about what almost happened. Was she falling for him? She barely knew him, but it didn't feel that way. Everything about him felt familiar, like something she had been waiting for without realizing it. Meanwhile, Damon paced outside the guest house. He hated the feeling in his chest. He had nothing to offer her, no future, no family, no fortune. Just his hands, his skills, and a heart already starting to betray him. He knew if he fell, he'd fall hard. And she didn't belong in his world. The next morning, he was colder. More distant. "I have a lot of work today," he said quickly when Alina stopped by the garage. She noticed it instantly but didn't push. Still, something about the way he avoided her eyes stung more than she expected. Alina's birthday was coming up, and her friends expected the usual fancy dinner. But she shocked them by saying, "Just a small party at home this time." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Don't tell me it's because of your mechanic friend?" Alina said nothing, which said everything. She hesitated for days before slipping an invitation under Damon's door. "You don't have to come. Just, if you want." Damon stared at the invite, unsure what to do. He hadn't been to a real party in years, let alone one hosted by someone like her. The night arrived. Alina looked stunning in a soft silk gown, but her eyes kept drifting to the door. Just when she began to lose hope, it opened, and Damon walked in. Clean-shaven, wearing a borrowed blazer, and looking completely out of place. Yet all she could do was smile. The guests buzzed with curiosity. "Who's he? Is he the new chef? He came with who?" Alina didn't care. Her eyes locked with Damon's across the room, and suddenly the noise faded. He gave a small, unsure wave. She walked over, heart pounding. You clean up nice, she teased. You look, Damon struggled for words. Like a dream. They laughed, awkward but genuine. She offered him a drink, and they moved to a quieter corner, away from judgmental eyes. But Vanessa wasn't done. She approached with a smile too sweet to be sincere. So, Damon, what do you do when you're not fixing cars? He smiled calmly. I read. Think. Try not to starve. Vanessa laughed awkwardly, but Alina's glare made her back off. Damon had held his ground, and Alina liked him even more for it. As the party wound down, soft music played in the garden outside. Fairy lights lit up the hedges, and a gentle breeze rustled the trees. Damon stood alone, watching the stars. Alina walked out, heels in hand. Thought I'd find you here. He looked at her and smiled. Too much glitter in there. She laughed. Same. A slow song began to play. She held out her hand. Dance with me? Damon hesitated, then nodded, taking her hand gently. They danced in silence, bodies close, hearts loud. No words were needed. For a moment, it was just them under the stars, no titles, no history, no street or estate. Just two souls who found something unexpected. As the song ended, Alina rested her head on his chest. Damon closed his eyes. He was in trouble, and he knew it. The next morning, Damon packed his things. He left a note on the garage table. Thank you for everything. I can't stay. You deserve more. Then he disappeared. When Alina saw it, her hands shook. No, she whispered. Not like this. She searched the streets, asked around, nothing. Days passed. Her calls went unanswered. She checked the hill, the diner, even the alley where they first met. Damon was gone. She returned to her mansion, heartbroken and confused. Why had he left? Was it her? Was it fear? She buried herself in work, pretending not to care. But her eyes betrayed her every time she looked at the now silent garage. 2 weeks later, he came back. He walked into the garage as if nothing happened. Alina was inside, staring at the empty workbench. She turned, shocked. Where have you been? Damon looked tired, eyes sunken. I needed to think. Her voice cracked. You left without saying goodbye. He stepped closer. Because I was falling for you. And I knew if I stayed, I'd ruin it. Tears welled in her eyes. You already have. And now you're here, why? He reached out, gently taking her hand. Because no matter how far I ran, my heart kept leading me back to you. That night, a storm rolled in. Rain pelted the roof of the garage as if echoing their emotions. Alina and Damon stood under the overhang, the silence between them heavier than the sky above. Then, without warning, she stepped into the rain. If you're going to keep running, at least tell me the truth before you go. Damon followed her, soaked within seconds. The truth? His voice trembled. I've been homeless for years. I sleep where I can. I eat what I find. I don't have anything to offer you, no future, no promises. Just me. His words hit like thunder. Alina didn't flinch. She walked up to him, the rain soaking her dress. Then let me decide if you are enough. Not your past. Not your pockets. You. He stared at her, stunned. And in the pouring rain, without a single umbrella, they finally kissed, slow, desperate, and unforgettable. Vanessa wasn't happy. She had always believed someone like Alina should be with someone powerful, not a nobody from the street. So, she started stirring trouble. Rumors. Gossip. She even hinted that Damon was using Alina to get into her world. Alina brushed it off at first. But when a client asked if she was involved with her mechanic for PR, she realized the damage was growing. Damon noticed the whispers, the looks, the awkward silences that followed them around. One evening, he said quietly, "Maybe Vanessa's right." Alina turned sharply. "Don't do that. Don't let people write our story." He sighed. "They already are." But Alina had had enough. She walked straight into her friend group the next day and said loud and clear, "If you can't respect who I love, stay out of my life." And just like that, the game changed. Damon began working full-time at the garage. He fixed engines by day and built furniture in the evenings, saving every cent. Alina didn't ask for anything, she just sat near him sometimes, reading, offering snacks, or stealing kisses between tasks. One night, he showed her a wooden sculpture he had carved. It was of a woman standing strong, her arms open, hair blowing behind her. "She reminds me of you," he said. Alina stared at it, tears in her eyes. "It's beautiful." Damon looked away. "I made it with pieces I found in the dumpster." She smiled and held it close. "That makes it priceless." Damon realized then that she wasn't just rich, she was rare. And somehow, she saw value in him when the world never did. Damon had been hiding it. The coughs. The weight loss. The dizziness. He didn't want to worry Alina. But one morning, he collapsed in the garage. She found him barely breathing, oil-stained hands shaking. Panic flooded her. She called for help, stayed by his side through every test, every scan. When the doctor told her it was a chest infection worsened by years of exposure and cold nights, her heart broke. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. Damon looked at her from the hospital bed. "I didn't want you to see me weak." She leaned in, pressing her forehead against his. "Loving you doesn't depend on your strength. It depends on your truth." During his recovery, Alina brought the garage to him. She set up a small workbench beside his bed, complete with miniature car models and toolkits. "You're not allowed to be bored," she teased. Damon smiled weakly. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do," she said firmly. "You deserve everything you were denied." Day by day, his strength returned. With her by his side, even the medicine tasted less bitter. They shared late-night laughs, silly games, and deep talks about life, talks he never thought he'd have. And as he slowly got back on his feet, he started to believe something he never had before: he was worthy of being loved. One afternoon, a stranger appeared at the garage, an older man in a suit, holding a photo. "Is your name Damon?" he asked. Damon nodded, confused. "You're hard to find," the man said. "I've been looking for you for years." It turned out the man had once worked with Damon's father, who had passed away long ago. He left something behind. It was tied up in legal mess for years. The man handed Damon an envelope. Inside, a deed to a small property and a letter written years ago. Damon sat in silence. He never thought his father cared. Alina read the letter beside him, and for the first time in forever, he cried, not from pain, but from healing. The property wasn't much, a tiny plot with a rundown shed. But Damon saw more. What if we turned this into something, he asked Alina. A place where people like me, like I was, can come fix things. Not just cars. Lives. She lit up. A repair shop, for more than engines. They got to work. Slowly, steadily. Damon poured his soul into it. Alina designed the layout. Together, they transformed the old shed into a cozy, warm, creative space. And when it was done, Damon put up a wooden sign over the door. Second Chance Garage. Damon was nervous. He had no ring, no fancy dinner planned. Just a heart ready to ask the biggest question of his life. He brought her to the garage one night, lit with candles and string lights. He gave her a wrench. Check the back tire, he joked. She did, and there, tied to the rim, was a ribbon. Attached to it, a note, "Want to fix hearts together forever?" Alina turned, eyes wide, hands shaking. Damon knelt. I may not have much. But if you say yes, I'll spend my whole life loving you better every day. Alina didn't even let him finish. She tackled him into a hug, laughing through tears. Yes. 1,000 times yes. But not everyone was happy. Vanessa made one last attempt to sabotage them. She leaked photos from Damon's past, sleeping on benches, eating from dumpsters, hoping to humiliate him and make Alina rethink the engagement. Instead, Alina posted the photos herself. This is Damon. This is strength. This is survival. This is who I love. The post went viral. Damon's story inspired millions. And Vanessa's power? It vanished. She left town quietly. No one missed her. They married in a backyard garden surrounded by friends, real friends. Alina wore a simple dress. Damon wore the same blazer he'd worn to her birthday. And when they said their vows, everyone cried. I used to have no home, Damon said. Now I have you. You're everything I didn't even know I needed. Alina smiled through tears. You fixed more than my car. You fixed me. They kissed to the sound of laughter and birds. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. They moved into a small house near the garage. No marble floors. No chandeliers. Just warmth, music, and mismatched mugs. Damon cooked. Alina painted. Sometimes, they danced in the kitchen just because the radio played their song. They didn't care about headlines or wealth. They cared about mornings that started with kisses and nights that ended with laughter. Their love grew in ordinary moments, grocery runs, flat tires, burnt toast. And in those moments, they found something rare, peace. One day, Alina handed Damon a box. It's not your birthday, he said. Just open it, she grinned. Inside was a framed picture, the bench where he used to sleep, only now, it had a plaque. It read, where strength rested before it stood tall. She had bought the bench, preserved it, and turned it into a symbol. Damon stared at it, speechless. You remembered, he whispered. Alina kissed his cheek. I remember everything that made you who you are. He hugged her tight, knowing he would never need anything else in life again. Months later, Alina went through her old journal, the one she kept before her car broke down. On one page, she'd written, "I wish someone would just see me. Not the money. Not the name. Just me." She smiled, flipping forward. On the last page, she had scribbled after their first kiss, "I found him. And he sees me." She closed the journal and looked at Damon across the room, tinkering with a small engine. He looked up and winked. And just like that, her heart skipped again. One evening, a young woman knocked on the garage door. Her car had broken down just outside. Damon walked out, wiping his hands. "Need a hand?" She nodded, embarrassed. "I don't know what happened." Alina stepped beside him. "Don't worry, you're in good hands." As Damon opened the hood, the girl asked, "This place, it feels different. Like more than a garage." Alina smiled. "That's because it is." And as they helped the stranger, Damon looked at the exact spot where he once stood, hungry and cold, asking for a chance. Only now, he was the one giving them. Because sometimes, when you help fix someone else's journey, you end up finding your own. And that's exactly what happened.